Jenifer, we're so pleased to have you here in Mexico and to have the opportunity of learning from your experiences. And we know that you've developed award-winning programs for the prevention of teen pregnancy and for violence prevention. I wonder if you could talk about what you think might be the key elements of those kinds of programs.
Sure. So I have had the opportunity to develop several programs around teen pregnancy prevention and more recently intimate partner violence prevention among young relationships. And with all the programs that I've worked on, I think the key element is involving the participants, the young people, in the design of the programs. And so I've always taken kind of a youth development approach in how I work with young people and involving them in the process so that you're able to bring in true, authentic youth voice to what the services that are being provided for them. So you know that it's directly going to be beneficial for them. And when that happens, they're more likely to be involved in your programming, they're more likely to be excited about it, share this experiences with their friends, and so you have a lot more success. They also feel really invested in the program, so they feel ownership around it, and that's been one of my biggest successes. Another opportunity for having kind of a good programming is involving community partnerships in the process. So you can't just, improve the health and lives of young people by doing sexual health education. There's a whole bunch of services that go into that, and so I partner with the community in a very collaborative approach to give more robust and more comprehensive services for the young people. So it's got many different elements to it.
So it sounds like each one of the programs that you might be implementing might look different in different settings with different groups of different kids.
Absolutely.
Is that the case?
I think that is the case. You really have to think about what are the experiences within the community that you're working in, and some communities have particular issues that young people are dealing with in their schools. They might have lack of outside school activities, so you would want to work in that setting with young people. So it varies community to community, and you have to be willing to adapt your program and adapt your approach to the community and to the participants that you're working with. So definitely adaptability is key for that.
So you have to be, it sounds like you have to be really flexible.
You have to be flexible, and you also have to listen to, what are the issues that these people are dealing with, and what are the solutions that they see helping them, and incorporating those things into how you approach the work that you do.
So I think that's quite different to the idea that lots of people might have around what a violence prevention program looks like, where very often what people will do is they'll prepare something and they'll take that to a group and give. It sounds like what you're doing is you're kind of co-creating with people to solve problems which aren't necessarily the problem that's only around violence. It sounds like all kinds of other problems get solved along the way.
Well, I think that the result of dealing with particular issues when you do it holistically is, sure, there's many other problems that are getting solved along the way, but the approach doesn't, or the target issue that you're trying to change doesn't have to change. So for example, in teen pregnancy prevention, we're really interested in evidence-based interventions. We have researched and tested these programs, and they're shown to be effective. And so you really want to, kind of stick to what's effective. But within a program, what can be effective is the pedagogy that you use, the content of the curriculum. Those things can essentially stay the same. What's different is how you interact with your participants, the ways that you interact with them, in school, out of school, for different communities. Those are the things that you really can be flexible with. And then, utilizing the resources that already exist in the community and how you can improve upon those resources as a supplement to what the organizations that are already working in those communities are doing. So it's co-collaboration in a sense, but while maintaining the integrity of the curriculum or the program that you're intending to achieve specific outcomes. And those outcomes, generally are delaying, sexual activity, or increasing the use of condoms, increasing the use of long-term contraceptives, decreasing the incidences of violence in relationships. These outcomes, those are what you're trying to achieve. But as a result of those things, you're also, achieving so many more outcomes of health by partnering and working more collaboratively and, within the structures that are already existing.
You've made a really interesting link as well between the prevention of early teen pregnancy and the prevention of intimate partner relationship amongst young people, and gender and gender equity. That's not something that's necessarily always to the fore when people are discussing these areas. How is it that you came to see that link, and could you maybe talk a little bit about what that link is?
Yeah, actually, it was really amazing, and I think it attests to my point about working collaboratively within the community. But we were really focused on our, primary outcomes of reducing teen pregnancies and increasing the use of condoms and contraceptives amongst the young people we were working with. However, we knew that because gender played such an influential role, it was a key determinant to teen pregnancy prevention, we also understood that it was a key determinant to intimate partner violence as well. And so we partnered with a local organization in the Austin, Texas area called Safe Place, and they're doing a lot of great work in the domestic violence field, and particularly in education prevention for young individuals who have been exposed to violence in their lives. And by working together with them, we were able to start to identify where the gaps in sexual health education existed and how we weren't getting at the role that gender was playing within the intimate partner violence world. So we were able to start to flesh out some of the areas that we could really kind of focus on within our curriculum to start to challenge both of those things. So, for a couple of examples, if you'd like, starting to talk about coercion and this sense of coercion in relationships and how that behavior in and of itself leads to both violence within relationships as well as coercion of sexual activity, which leads to pregnancy and STIs and other negative health outcomes. So we started to focus in on some of these issues to create a more comprehensive and targeted curriculum that would address both issues.
So you've now made that central, that it's part of the curriculums of both of those kinds of programs?
We try to continue to utilize both of those approaches in the curriculum. Currently with our, one of our award-winning programs is the Gender Matters program. Within that, as well as future projects that we're developing and future curriculum that we're writing.
So, we were talking just briefly before we started to do this interview that you work with, you've worked with different cultures, different kinds of groups in different cities in the States. And I imagine that gender equity plays out really differently when it is a different culture. I wonder if you could talk to us a little bit about what kind of adaptations you have to make and how your approach might differ.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what we found and what has been different is that when we think about gender, we think about these traditional norms around gender scripts that young men and adult men and young women and adult women sort of prescribe to. And what we've learned is that when we work with the Latino population, those scripts generally tend to hold true. You see more traditional values amongst the young women in terms of acquiescence and a lack of power and equity within their relationships. And on the other side with the young Latino men, you see a lot of power differentials, a lot of violence and other goals that they're trying to achieve to assert their power and their dominance within their relationships. That's not necessarily the case when we work with young African American women and men. The men tend to kind of prescribe to some of the same sort of gender scripts. The young women have more non-traditional views around their roles. definitely challenge that power dynamic. They're more interested in having an egalitarian relationship. But what happens is that instead of it becoming an equal relationship, there's a struggle for power within those dynamics. And so the relationships become much more adversarial. And so in the approach, working with these young men and women, because we do take a gender synchronized approach to our education, that means that we want to involve men and women in the workshops together so they can learn together and learn to communicate together. We have to take a different approach because there's a lot more power struggle happening in the classroom when you have your young African American men and women working together. And so we definitely focus a lot more on like communication styles and effective communication. You know, there are many young girls who will challenge us to say, you know, aggressive communication is the only communication that works in my relationship. And when I learn more about their relationships, I understand that that's how they are able to get to where they need to get within their relationship. So it's a lot harder to work in that setting, but you have to just be very patient and open to hearing, you know, their perspectives and their life experiences and helping them to reconstruct a scenario that works for them in their future so they can see themselves having more equal relationships without the power struggle.
And I wondered if you think that's one of the key elements of the programs that you've developed that are so effective is the fact that you've involved the same number of women as men, the same number of young women and young men together.
Yes.
Because these are often lopsided programs, aren't they, where people go in and work exclusively with.
Yes.
Sometimes they might be called perpetrators, sometimes they might be called men,
right.
and sometimes they might be called women.
Yeah.
But there aren't so many programs where they are specifically aiming right from the beginning
right.
to involve everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I think that taking that synchronized approach is really one of the innovative approaches with some of our programming, because oftentimes you don't see them working together. So I do think that is really been helpful for young men and women to learn how to understand each other and you know, change sort of the way that they engage in their relationships together. They get to really listen to what the other folks, you know, whether it's you know, their male-female relationships, heterosexual relationships, and this also is an opportunity for our program to be very inclusive. Not all young people prescribe to this binary sense of gender, and so this allows us to be very inclusive for, you know, all kinds of gender identities and sexual identities of young people, and give them the opportunity to learn in a safe place. So it kind of achieves two ends to that.
It sounds like it also gives them an opportunity that you create a space where they can experience a different kind of way of relating.
Absolutely. And, you know, we really focus in on creating an opportunity where they can feel heard and respected and safe to say and do, you know, what comes naturally for them. And so we start that from the very beginning, that this is a place for everyone to be who they are and to be accepting. And it's great to be able to open up and learn about someone else's values or perspectives on life that you may not have otherwise been able to experience. So I think they're able to walk away from that with just an enlightened view. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it sounds like wonderful work.
Thank you.
It's a real pleasure to
Thank you
hear
so
a bit
much.
about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.